February 14th, 1945, 25,000 feet over Saxony. The morning is wrong. The air in the cockpit of the B-17 is thin and brutally cold, each breath a hiss of oxygen through a rubber mask. Frost feathers the edges of the plexiglass, a delicate crystal frame around a vision of hell. Out ahead, where the horizon should be a clean, pale line of dawn, it glows a deep, living red. A furnace light pulsing against the underside of the clouds.
What is that?
The pilot's voice, muffled by his mask, crackles through the intercom. Are we off course? The navigator leans over his charts, the small lamp on his station casting a pool of yellow on the paper. No, Skip, that's it. That's Dresden. His tone is quiet, disbelieving. The city is already burning. It's been burning all night. They were supposed to be the ones to start the fires, not arrive after the inferno was already lit. Down below, hidden by that terrible glow, was a city known as Florence on the Elbe, a jewel box of Baroque architecture, of palaces, cathedrals, and art galleries. For years, it had been considered a sanctuary, spared the destruction visited upon other German cities. Its hospitals were overflowing with wounded soldiers from the Eastern Front. Its streets and parks were packed with a river of refugees, hundreds of thousands of them, fleeing the advance of the Red Army. They had come to Dresden believing it was safe. But safety was a luxury the Allies could no longer afford. It was early 1945. The war was in its endgame, but the German army was still fighting fiercely. Stalin had been pressuring Churchill and Roosevelt to disrupt the flow of German reinforcements to the Eastern Front. And Dresden, for all its cultural treasures, was a critical railway hub. It was a choke point, a knot in the steel web that supplied German divisions trying to hold back the Soviet tide. The Allied objective was brutally simple: break those transport links, shatter German morale, and hasten the end of the war. The mission briefing the night before, in a smoky Nissen hut back in England, had been straightforward. The primary target, the Friedrichstadt marshalling yards on the western edge of the city. Weather forecast: heavy cloud and smoke from the previous night's RAF raid. If visual bombing was impossible, they were to use the H-2X radar, a blunt instrument that painted a crude, ghostly map of the city below. The briefing officer had stressed formation discipline. Keep it tight, boys. We expect light flak, maybe a few fighters, but don't get complacent. Now high above the carnage, complacency feels like a word from another lifetime. Our pilot, a 23-year-old from Ohio, keeps his eyes scanning the instruments and the sky. His hands, steady on the yoke, are the only part of him that isn't trembling. Beside him, the navigator keeps murmuring coordinates, his voice a low hum against the drone of the 4 Wright Cyclone engines. In the nose cone, the bombardier lies on his stomach, staring down through his Norden bomb sight at a world made of smoke. Above them, a squadron of P-51 Mustangs weaves back and forth, their silver fuselages catching the red light like knives slicing through the murk. They are the shepherds, guarding the flock of heavy bombers. Even at this altitude, a strange, faint smell taints the sterilized oxygen from their tanks, the smell of something vast and ancient. Burning. Smoke. Not the clean white puffs of flak, but a thick, greasy column rising from the earth, a pillar of soot that has replaced the city. The radio is a clipped, terse chatter of call signs and acknowledgments. No fear, no shock, just the flat, professional language of men doing a job. The lead bombardier's voice cuts through the static. Target in sight, on the radar, at least. It's all one big blur down there. The formation banks, a slow, ponderous turn, aligning for the bomb run. The red glow from below intensifies, bathing the undersides of the great silver wings in a coppery twilight at noon. A low hydraulic groan echoes through the fuselage. The bomb bay doors are opening, revealing the neat racks of high explosives nestled within the belly of the beast. The bomber shudders slightly as it slips into the turbulent air rising from the pyre below. They are poised on a knife's edge, seconds away from the air over the target is alive. It's not empty space anymore. It's a physical force, a roiling ocean of heat pushing back against us. The B-17 shudders, not from flak, but from the thermal updrafts clawing at the wings. It feels like a giant, invisible hand is trying to shove us off course. On the instrument panel, the needles for airspeed and altitude tremble, dancing a frantic jig. The whole airframe groans under the strain, a low, resonant hum that you feel in your teeth. Down in the nose, through the plexiglass, the bombardier is fighting his own battle. He's hunched over the Norden bomb site, his gloved hands slick with sweat despite the cold. He's trying to lock onto the marshalling yards, but the city below is warping, shimmering through waves of heat distortion. The map he memorized is gone, replaced by a living, breathing monster of fire. A vast red dome pulses at the heart of the city, punctured by the black skeletal fingers of factory chimneys. Railway lines, our primary targets, glisten for a second and then vanish into the furnace. Flak is surprisingly light. We see the black puffs blossoming below us, scattered and almost lazy, as if the gunners on the ground are distracted. The real enemy up here is the air itself. It's a chaotic, violent medium. A wingman to our right vanishes for a heart-stopping moment, swallowed by a thick plume of black smoke, before his formation lights reappear, a faint green star in the swirling chaos. I see our radio operator's lips moving, but no sound comes through the intercom. A silent prayer, maybe. You see it a lot. The orders crackle through the headset, steady and clipped, a lifeline of procedure in the middle of this madness. Primary target obscured. Repeat, primary obscured. Shift to secondary. Bomb by radar if visual is impossible. That's the reality of it. You train for precision, for hitting a specific siding, a specific bridge. But when the world below is boiling, you do what you can. The bombardier adjusts his aim, his face a mask of concentration. He knows, we all know, that some of these bombs will drift. The wind shear at this altitude is a lottery, and the thermal columns can toss a 500-pounder like a leaf. Down there, lost in the smoke and fire, are the people. We can't see them, not from 6 miles up. We see shapes, structures, the geometry of a city being erased. But you can't help but sense the chaos, the sheer human terror unfolding beneath the mushrooming clouds. They're caught in a cyclone of our making, a storm of fire and steel that we've unleashed and now must fly through. It's an uncomfortable, unspoken truth that hangs in the cockpit, heavier than the smell of cordite and engine oil. Bombs away. The call is almost a relief. The plane leaps upward, suddenly lighter, nimbler. The bombardier leans back, the tension draining from his shoulders for a fraction of a second. The formation banks, a slow, graceful turn away from the inferno. The engines whine as we push the throttles forward, eager for the safety of altitude and distance. I look back one last time. The city doesn't look like a city anymore. It looks like a sunrise happening at midnight, a sun that has imploded, burning inward. And as we head for home, I see them against the cold blue horizon, the unmistakable silver glint of the second wave. Hundreds more bombers still inbound. Their journey into the fire has just begun. The daylight crews pushed onward, their engines a steady drone against the vast, cold air. But what they were flying toward was a city already transformed, a landscape altered by the events of the previous night. It had begun under the cover of darkness. Royal Air Force Pathfinders arrived first, their sole mission to precisely mark the target. They dropped target indicators bright, cascading flares that pricked the blackness over Dresden, designating the aiming points for the bomber stream that followed. The first wave of bombers wasn't meant to destroy, but to prepare. They carried high-explosive blockbuster bombs designed to blow the roofs off buildings, to shatter windows and expose the wooden skeletons of the city's architecture. This created a kind of tinderbox. Then came the second wave, their bomb bays filled not with high explosives, but with tens of thousands of small incendiary devices. These rained down into the exposed structures, seeding countless individual fires across a wide area. What happened next was not just a large fire, but a meteorological event. As these thousands of smaller fires grew, they began to merge. They started pulling in oxygen from the surrounding air, creating a colossal updraft. Air rushed inward along the ground at hurricane speeds, a wind powerful enough to uproot trees and snatch people from the streets. This inward rush of air fed the flames, which coalesced into a single, monstrous column of superheated gas rising thousands of feet into the sky. This is a firestorm. The heat becomes its own weather system, a self-sustaining vortex of destruction. As the American bombers approached after dawn, their radios began to crackle with reports from the lead formations. The smoke was visible from 100 miles away, a vast, greasy pillar staining the horizon. The reality awaiting them was worse than anything they could have imagined. Flight logs and post-mission debriefs capture the sense of awe and horror. Pilots described flying not toward a city, but toward a red bowl glowing on the earth, a volcanic pulse of light visible even in the morning sun. It's important to separate myth from reality here. Dresden was, as legend holds, a city of art, music, and Baroque beauty, known as the Florence on the Elbe, but it was also an active communications and transportation hub, a vital node feeding men and material to the German army fighting on the Eastern Front. While its anti-aircraft defenses, the flak belts, were not as dense as those protecting the industrial Ruhr Valley, they were not absent. The chaos created by the night attack didn't eliminate the danger for the daytime crews. It magnified it, making navigation and targeting a nightmare. For the men in the lead aircraft, the mission became a desperate calculation. The bombardier squinted through his bomb sight, trying to pick out a landmark, a bridge, a specific rail yard through the thick churning smoke. He faced a difficult choice. Trust a blurred, indistinct visual cue, or rely on the cold, impersonal certainty of his radar scope, which showed the city as a shimmering, undefined mass. The escort pilots, flying P-51 Mustangs, scanned the skies not just for enemy fighters, but for the unpredictable turbulence and violent updrafts thrown off by the inferno below. They saw no German interceptors rising to meet them, only the pulsing heat of a city being consumed. And then the second American wave arrived. Their orders were to strike the rail yards to sever those critical arteries to the front. But from their altitude, under the thick canopy of smoke and flame, the rail yards were indistinguishable from the city blocks. The bomb bay doors opened. A new cascade of explosives began its descent, stepping across a target that had already ceased to exist in any recognizable form. February 14th dawns, or rather it fails to. The weather, which had held with an almost malevolent clarity, now closes in. A thick, impenetrable blanket of cloud smothers what remains of Dresden, a shroud for a city still burning. For the bombers of the 8th Air Force already en route from England, this changes everything. The meticulously planned visual targets, the rail yards, the marshalling points are gone, hidden beneath a gray-white sea. Now, it's a different kind of war. The hum of the H-2X radar sets fills the cabins, a constant electronic pulse. On the glowing green screens, operators trace the ghost image of a city below. They are bombing blind, relying entirely on these pulses of energy to paint a picture of the ground. The bombardiers, peering into their scopes, see not buildings and streets, but abstract shapes, echoes of a city's skeleton. The bombs are released into the void, a leap of faith into the swirling cloud and smoke. This is the fog of war, made literal. On this same day, miles away, another bomber group, squinting at their own radar returns, would mistake the city of Prague for their target. The radar signature, the bend of a river, the layout of the bridges, it was a near-perfect mirror. A tragic, fatal error born from technological imprecision and the immense pressure of high-altitude flight. It's a chilling reminder of how easily the lines blur, how one city can become another in the green glow of a radar screen. Back in England, hours later, the debriefing huts are thick with the smell of damp flight gear, stale cigarette smoke, and cold coffee. The crews are back, but they haven't entirely landed. They speak in hushed tones, their voices flat with exhaustion. They talk about the flight home, about the sky over Germany that refused to go dark. Long after they had crossed back over the lines, a terrifying, persistent red glow pulsed on the horizon behind them. The signature of a firestorm so immense it had its own weather system. They describe updrafts from the inferno that tossed their 4-engine bombers around like leaves in a gale, a physical manifestation of the destruction they had unleashed. While they talk, the ground story in Dresden unfolds in silence and desperation. The first rescue teams, many of them just civilians and local soldiers, begin to tunnel into the collapsed cellars of the Altstadt, listening for muffled cries. Along the river, survivors, coated in gray ash, stagger through the ruins, a silent, shocked procession heading east toward the banks of the Elbe, seeking escape, seeking water, seeking anything that wasn't fire. The intricate ironwork of the main railway station is twisted into grotesque, modern sculptures, a testament to the heat. Soon, the first official words arrive. Allied communiques are released, the language clipped and sanitized. They report a successful attack on transport and communication nodes in Dresden, a key military objective struck at the urgent request of our Soviet allies to hinder German troop movements to the Eastern Front. It's clean, professional, and strategically sound. But for a few of the airmen sitting in the quiet of the debriefing huts, a disconnect begins to form. They are men who believe in precision, in the clean lines of their maps, and the science of their bomb sites. They wanted to believe they were surgically removing a cancer from the German war machine. Yet, the memory of that all-consuming red glow, That violent, uncontrollable updraft doesn't align with the neat language of a communique. It spoke of something else, something far more absolute. The questions, small at first, begin to surface. The glow over the horizon eventually fades to a pall of ash that will hang over the valley for days. But the questions, they refuse to. They are just beginning to form, settling like that same fine ash in the minds of the men who flew, and in the conscience of the world that would soon learn their story. The dawn of February 14th, 1945, broke over a scene of utter devastation. What was once the Florence on the Elbe was now a smoldering ruin. The strategic objectives, as laid out by Allied planners, were met. The city's critical rail and road links were severed, effectively paralyzing troop movements from the west to the eastern front. The industrial heart of Dresden, its factories and workshops, had been silenced. The city's core, a tapestry of centuries-old architecture and culture, was largely gone, erased by fire and high explosives. But the military ledger tells only one side of the story. The other is written in human loss, a cost that has been debated and re-examined for decades. In the immediate aftermath, estimates of the dead soared into the hundreds of thousands, figures fueled by the chaos and the propaganda of the time. But history demands precision, even when the truth is painful. Meticulous post-war research, including German commissions, has since revised these numbers. The consensus now places the death toll in the order of tens of thousands, likely around 25,000. It's not the apocalyptic figure once claimed, but it is a number that remains profoundly harrowing, a testament to the concentrated fury unleashed from the sky. Each number was a life, a family, a future extinguished in the firestorm. In the wake of the bombing, a bitter controversy erupted that has never truly subsided. Was Dresden a legitimate military target, a vital transportation hub fueling the Nazi war machine in its final desperate throes? Or was it an act of terror bombing designed to break the will of the German people? The debate pits military logic against cultural loss. It forces us to weigh the strategic calculus of shortening a brutal war against the destruction of a city cherished for its beauty. This was late-war arithmetic, calculated as the Red Army advanced relentlessly from the east and the Allies pushed from the west. Every decision was fraught with a desperate urgency, a race against time and a rising death count across the continent. For the young men in the bombers, the crews of Lancasters and B-17s, the debate was less abstract. They were the witnesses. They saw the sky itself turn red, a false, terrifying dawn that glowed for 100 miles. They carried that image home, a searing memory that would last a lifetime. Some returned convinced of the mission's necessity, firm in their belief that they had helped end a global nightmare. They were soldiers following orders, doing their part to defeat a monstrous evil. Others were haunted. They wrestled with the purpose, and what that purpose cost. At veterans' reunions, decades later, you could still see it in their eyes. The memories remained scorched at the edges, a quiet burden carried through the years. The post-war era brought official inquiries and a long, painful process of rebuilding, not just of the city's stones, but of its memory. Memorials rose in Dresden, symbols of reconciliation and a warning against the horrors of war. The Frauenkirche, left as a ruin for decades, was painstakingly reconstructed and reconsecrated, a powerful testament to survival and hope. It stands today not as an erasure of the past, but as a conversation with it. The story of Dresden offers no easy answers. It doesn't neatly fit into a narrative of good versus evil or necessity versus atrocity. It forces us to confront the brutal, ambiguous realities of total war. It neither accuses nor absolves, but asks us to sit with the complexity to understand that in a conflict that devoured certainty and consumed millions of lives, even the sky could betray the color of dawn mirroring the fires below. The ash settled, but the questions remain, echoing through history. There are countless stories like this from the Second World War, moments of profound moral complexity seen through the eyes of those who were there. To explore more of these untold histories, subscribe and join us as we continue to look into the past.